I'm Nicola Tallant and you're watching Crime World, a podcast about criminals, drugs and the underworld in Ireland and across the globe. Make sure you subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you can be the first to watch all our latest episodes. You can also listen wherever you get your podcasts. Ryan Tubridy is looking under a huge amount of pressure and stress there today, and you cannot not feel sorry for him sitting there. I mean, it looks like it's like we're back in the courtroom and somebody is in the witness box, and you know.
Yeah, I mean, it must be a gruelling process. You know, there's no doubt about it, and you can see, of course, Ryan Tubridy's been on the radio for so long. I think he said since he was 12 years old, but I don't think he's ever been sort of interrupted and just shut down and say answer the question. So all of that is
he'd be used to being in control.
Absolutely.
He lost it today.
He lost, yes, absolutely. He's not used to that, and he doesn't know how to interact.
He interrupted a few times there today, and they were having none of it. Whereas whenever he interrupted before on the Late Late Show and whatever, the guest would shut up shop and wait for the next question. Today that didn't happen.
And did you notice the odd time he had a little bit of a diatribe about people stopping him on the street and about the mound of letters of support he got and everything. And every time they tried to stop him in the middle of that, he just sort of didn't really know what to... He was comfortable when he was having those moments of discussing, you know, that.
He actually started off looking... healthier and fresher, certainly, and that was part of obviously it's the start of the day, and then he made his opening statement, which was obviously well rehearsed and well prepared, but by the end of the day now this evening he looked like a different person to 7-8 hours earlier when he walked in.
Looks exhausted.
Now I wouldn't say there was gusto walking in this morning, but he certainly looked like he was prepared for the day. But very soon after the grilling started in the mid-morning, he took a hammering, and it definitely told on him by the end of the day.
But that said, I mean, I think he's done enough to ensure that he has a future career in broadcasting. I have to say, I do think that at the end of all those hearings...
I don't think so.
Well, I'll tell you why.
RTE?
On RTE, probably. I'll tell you why, right? I think that, you know, I think that he came across relatively sympathetic. He didn't make any particular faux pas. I think people will, in a bit of time, forgive him. I think it'll always hang over his head. I think it was an extraordinarily full frontal defence if you saw what they went in with. So I suppose Ryan Tubridy, after his second statement, straight after it, apologised. But today they went in and said they did nothing wrong at all. I mean, it was a really, really, you know, it was from start to finish. They said they did nothing wrong at all, which is, I don't think people were expecting. And I think that in their ideal world, they'll come out as victims of this kind of witch hunt and on all of that. I don't think that will work, but I think he did enough to ensure that people will forgive him. That's my opinion.
I actually, you know, you would love me to argue with Niall on this one, but I actually agree. I think he's done no more damage, is kind of the way I'm pitching it. I don't think he's had his best day ever. If they were trying to decide how the day was going to go in advance, I'd say Niall kind of hit the nail on the head. They might have been able to become more relatable and maybe would have played on the victim role a little bit more in this. But I don't think they achieved that, but he definitely hasn't done more harm than the public perception of him this morning as he trotted in. I genuinely think that in some of the comments he was making today about RTE and what Noel was saying, you kind of would look at the TV and you go, well, they clearly are writing off his chances of ever working for them before, because some of the statements were bold. They basically put the entire blame at RTE's doorstep. But the more it went on, the more you realise that there could actually be a future here for him. He's going to need a break, there's no doubt about it. But I mean, a day or two ago, I probably would have told you, no, there's no chance of him working 40 again. But after today now, I think there might be a chance, yeah.
I was coming at it from a slightly different angle. I mean, the way he behaved wasn't a surprise to us. We all know Ryan Tubridy, essentially, because his job is very personable. He's not a newsreader. He's somebody whose personality has to come into the radio and to the Late Late Show. So we know what he's like. So it wasn't a surprise, except he was in an uncomfortable position, which he usually isn't. He's usually in charge of the narrative, etc. But I think the big problem now, I missed some of the afternoon there because I was in studio here. But what I feel is they haven't got anywhere. because he's sat there, he's clearly still very much attached to Noel Kelly.
Yeah.
If he goes back to RTE, it'll be under Noel Kelly's agreement with RTE. And are we anywhere that is a feasible option, that Noel Kelly can go back in at the moment into some sort of negotiations with RTE for any of these stars? I mean, Noel Kelly is, and the reason we're talking about this on Crime World is obviously because they're trying to untangle whether or not there's been dodgy accountancy going on here. And I think Noel Kelly has repeatedly said during the day and probably in the afternoon, I just did what RTE told me to. But the fact of the matter is, Noel Kelly owns a company, runs a company, he's director of it, and he's responsible for what that company does. It doesn't wash that RTE told him how to do his accountancy, how to lodge his invoices. The invoices lodged were for consultancy, which never happened, and they were sent to a company in England that he claims that he thought was Renault, but he never investigated it. I think there's some wrongdoing within his company.
2 companies he was using as well.
Yes.
I think Ryan Tubridy has probably done enough, but Noel Kelly, I do not think had a good day.
But Ryan Tubridy has sat there with Noel Kelly stapled to his side. They are one unit, and they have come at this as one unit, and he has said that he's going forward with trust in Noel Kelly. If he had maybe perhaps separated himself a little bit more from Noel Kelly, I think...
he separated himself from the actions of the invoices, and Noel Kelly has also said Ryan Tubridy didn't know anything about that. So although he's not separated himself from Noel and they backed each other up all the way, like there still could be life for him. He repeatedly, actually, Ryan Tubridy said stuff like, I don't know anything about the finances. That's not my area of expertise. I don't know any of that. So that's on the record if you want. I mean, Noel Kelly, at one point they were asked, did they have, I think it was crisis comms before they went in. Crisis comms, crisis communications would be which no doubt they would, and nobody would expect them not to, where you get communications advice, PR advice about what to say. So there was one particular difficult question that kept being asked to Noel Kelly, and that is on this invoice that was sent by him to RTE, as you referred to, it's for consultancy, is what is written on it, and it follows an invoice from an RTE executive saying don't put any names on it. Sorry, an email. So it just says for consultancy. Now everybody accepts that it wasn't for consultancy. That is an incorrect invoice. And while being questioned about this, and it went around and around and around like these things do, Noel Kelly kept giving the same response, which is, I was instructed to by RTE. Now, at one point, one of the TDs said, that's the Nuremberg defence. I think it was Catherine Murphy.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
Did she?
But I could be corrected there. It could have been somebody else. And the Nuremberg defence, of course, is the famous defence that was given in the Nuremberg trials after World War II, where Nazi officers said, well, I was just following orders. Now, let's say it's clearly not... comparable situation. But that idea, and that's constantly referenced in many years after, that it's not okay to say I was just following orders.
Well, it'd be more okay if you were staffed in RTE
Yes.
and you had an overlord who was your boss and who you had to...
And arguably, even then it wouldn't be okay.
He has a very successful independent company, or a number of companies that he uses. And he's very much saying 2 things: that he went in as an independent, he's not working for RTE, he repeated that, and then he's saying, but I was following orders.
Doesn't match up, does it?
It doesn't work.
This power play that he has over them doesn't match up with the individual who says, oh yeah, I'll do whatever they say, because he's walking in to negotiate these incredible deals for Ryan and the top stars. You can't just be the guy then who says repeatedly in the committee today, I'll just do whatever they tell me to.
Now on that, I mean, I didn't know Noel Kelly, had never heard him speaking before. So that was a bit of an eye-opener to me, what he was like. He came across, I thought, very personable. I was expecting him. He didn't come across the sort of guy that you saw in that picture when he looks a little bit gangster with his glasses on and everything. I'm sure he regrets that one. But he is sitting there flabbergasted when it's suggested to him that he is a powerful force in RTE.
Yeah.
He can't, Daragh, understand that.
I'd say that was practiced in the comms meetings the day before, because he knew that was coming, and he definitely feels that he's got the power over RTE. There's no doubt about it.
But he doesn't. He's absolutely flabbergasted. He thinks that's a mad thing to say.
Yeah.
And all he is, it's
says
ridiculous. And all he is somebody who just goes in and does a little bit of negotiations on behalf of the talent, which the talent, he said, doesn't only have to be presenters. It could be the receptionist. It could be the cameraman. I'd love to know how many receptionists and cameramen are on his books.
Well, at one stage he was talking about chaperoning this young talent through. One of his great joys is to find young talent and bring it through. I mean, that was part of his trying to become more relatable, and I kind of think he lost that argument early on. I just thought he came across as slightly unprepared. I thought it was like he was shocked by some of the questions, and whether the questions came out of left field, I don't think so. We didn't really think so in the newsroom. We thought there was certainly some repetitive stuff that was going on from the politicians. But Noel just came across as either ill-prepared or not caring enough to give it a proper answer. He almost came across as nonchalant and smug about some of it and dismissive of it. And I don't think that helped
I
his
don't know, was
case at
he
all.
smug?
No,
I got the impression that he was just more stunned by where he was. Totally and utterly stunned, and kind of stunned that his reasonable explanation wasn't just accepted and that was the end of it. It was like he just couldn't get over that nobody would accept that he was just acting on orders from RTE.
So I think it started off kind of badly for them, really, in the sense that they had I think it was a 39-page document. Now, they should have, ideally, if you're going before these committees, that document gets circulated 2, 3, 4 days in advance, even longer, and the committee get a chance to go through it. And we heard today that document only arrived at 8:20, I think it was.
23, according, yeah.
So that was a bad start. And I think that they thought this, as they said, this document is explosive. I think they used some term like that, Noel Kelly. And I think they thought that this was a full and total explanation for everything that has gone on. And that maybe that document would be the focus of the discussion. But obviously, a large part of the discussion circled back to this invoice for consultancy, whether they like it or not. And the reality is, he didn't have a great answer for it. I mean, there was some extraordinary bits to it, actually. That
He just sort of said he thought it was Renault.
Yeah.
He thought it was a Renault company. Now, I thought when he was really, put under, and I can't remember the TD's name, maybe one of you guys will, but he was talking about invoicing this company in the UK because the first of the 375 grand invoices went in to RTE.
And was paid by Renault.
Okay.
Because the gigs went on.
The second two, he was told to send to this UK, or to invoice this UK company. And one of the TDs said to him, but did you not question that? Because you were invoicing a service that was delivered in Ireland. So in other words, the invoicing should have happened within this country. And you were also, he said again, he was under instruction from RTE to do this. The TD said to him that this was a separate legal entity to RTE. And did you not think you were doing anything illegal? And he said no. And the TD said, but the service was delivered in Ireland for Irish companies, or the supposed service that they've been paid for, although they haven't delivered it yet. Ryan Tubridy was to put on 6 live shows on behalf of Renault. And he was asked, did that not raise concerns from an accounting point of view for your company that you're asked to bill a UK company for services delivered here in Ireland? That's the crux of it. And that could be really where the trouble is.
Yeah, so that's the thing that he just does not have a good answer to. And he keeps coming back to saying, I think RTE, they make 350 million a year. Was that the figure? And they're
and
therefore
a small company.
And and exactly, and they have all this corporate governance and legal oversight and financial oversight.
100 years legacy and
and therefore, why would I question it? I just do what they told me to do.
Because under law, a company has to have it does have to question.
Well, it has to be accurate. You have to
ensure. It has to question. You have to have people, employed within your company to make sure that you're doing everything within the legal framework of
and you
company
have to,
law.
If you send in an invoice, you have to stand behind that invoice that this is accurate, and that it's fully accurate what you say. So,
for example, if this had gone up a notch and somebody had suggested that this is some sort of a money laundering exercise, right?
Yeah.
That they were at, instead of what are they describing it as now? An illegal company.
Well, they're not
financial arrangement.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose. Well, look, I mean, they're not. I mean, what they're saying is that what they're actually saying is that Ryan Tubridy was not paid that money. They're still saying that money was not paid to Ryan Tubridy by RTE. It came out of an RTE account, but in fact, it's been paid by Renault for work that he hasn't got around to doing
all
yet.
Very complex and confusing. The fact of the matter is that they provided a service in Ireland to an Irish company, and they charged the money in the UK. So there's no VAT on that. I mean, you have to charge VAT if it's two companies trading here in Ireland. In the UK, there isn't. But that is really at the heart of it. And if a company was being accused of anything, a higher level of this, like of some sort of money laundering, the company can't say, I thought RTE were going to be okay. I thought they were, they're a big, huge company. I trusted them. It's up to the company that's billing them to make sure that they're not doing anything wrong.
Yeah, it is. I mean, if you send out a document, if we send out a document from the Sunday World, we have to make sure that it's accurate.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what somebody says, put that down as this or that. We have to stand over what we did. And he was asked that again and again, and he had the same answer again and again.
So I called one of my friends today. He's an accountant and he works in tax. He's a riot, as you can imagine. And basically I asked him what would be the reason for doing this, and he hadn't been sitting through the committee. He had a normal job. And so I was kind of giving him the details, and what he said was, he was like, okay, so what's the issue? And I said, well, obviously there must be some sort of loophole that they're trying to avail of. And he says, well, there isn't, because there's declarable tax over there. There's VAT that he will be liable for. So he was trying to question me questioning this process. So I said, well, look, if you were looking at this, and he doesn't operate in this sector, he's in a different sector, so he was trying to work it out. But what he said was that just the mere fact that it's going abroad just demonstrates that they're almost they're inferring that they need to be hide it, or they're complicating a process that doesn't have to be complicated.
And this is RTE are complicating it, or
the fact that whoever orders this payment to go to the UK to come back, then it's two sides of the triangle.
He said that was Geraldine O'Leary, who has just retired early.
Yes,
from RTE.
Yeah. I mean, they said the fact is that the invoice appears to be deceptive, not necessarily for tax purposes, but it said don't put any names on it.
Yeah.
And
they're hiding
market.
something.
I think they were hiding the money went to Ryan Tubridy. I mean, that is, and what Noel Kelly is saying is that's all on RTE.
Yeah.
So that's.
And is he right?
Well, I mean, it's he can say that, and it's certainly RTE told him to do that, but you're still responsible for what you generate in terms of the invoices he generates. It doesn't matter if you agree with me that I'm going to invoice you for this, you still have to be legally responsible for the invoice. Now, obviously in the previous hearing that RTE's, one of the financial guys had said, it's potentially the public have been defrauded by this. Obviously, there's been no Garda investigation or anything like this, but that is the real murky bit, and that is the bit that Noel Kelly in particular got stuck on.
But he was
who's defrauded? Who's the one that has defrauded who?
Well, I mean, nobody has necessarily been defrauded just yet, but there is certainly, they said, a possible defrauding, and
but that has to lie then with RTE, surely.
Well, it has to lie in surely it's with RTE, and obviously then Noel Kelly will have to be responsible for the invoice he generated, and does that comply with company law? I mean, that's something that we're not an expert.
You can't plead complete ignorance about this either. Like he was saying, he was 23 years, I think, doing this, and marketing, I think, was his background. Someone asked him, was he a salesman? So he must have known the optics of sending a check off to the UK to come back in. He's not stupid. Like, he knows what the implications of it were. He just thought he'd get away with it. And I think that's where they all did. They all thought they were going to get away with it until Grant Thornton stepped in. So, it is RTE's order, but he can't just play this Nuremberg thing. He can't just blame RTE for everything. He has to take responsibility as the agent and the business owner for his own accounting and the decisions that are made for his top client.
Having said that, if he was going to pay whatever taxes were due on that money, does it matter?
Well, it doesn't matter.
When it isn't money laundering, when it's just...
I don't think it is.
No, that's what I'm saying. When it's nowhere near, say, money laundering.
Yeah.
When it's simply an agreement between him and RTE, this is how you invoice. Once he pays the tax and whatever money he's paid from where,
no,
perhaps...
you still under company law have to generate accurate invoices, accurate accounting for what you're being paid for when, and accurately recorded. So that's part of company law as well. You can't just put that down as whatever you want, So that's company law. He's saying he was instructed to do it, and he's obviously clearly saying, I may have invoiced RTE, but I didn't know, and therefore that's a different thing. You know what I mean? I didn't knowingly send out an incorrect invoice. I unknowingly sent it to this barter account, which I presumed was Renault, which is what he said. So it's a full defence that they're giving. They're saying Ryan Tubridy was never overpaid. They're still saying he was never overpaid. Some of the questioning went back to say, do you not accept in reality that Ryan Tubridy was paid this extra amount, the 75s, all adding up? And they don't accept that at all. So they accept, at one point actually Ryan Tubridy was asked, what are you apologising for? And he was actually unclear what he had apologised for, because they're really getting down to saying they did nothing wrong at all. Yeah. And that Ryan Tubridy, one of the more extraordinary moments was that he said he's been paid for these extra Renault gigs. Now, they didn't happen, obviously, and he got the money, but he's still sort of planning to do them. Yeah. And if he doesn't do them, then you pay the money back to Renault, not to RTE.
Wouldn't you have thought from a PR point of view, though, that it would have been a good idea from the offset? I thought with the 7 points, the untruths, as they called them, and of course there was debate about it. Does that mean a lie?
It's not a lie in the eyes of the law.
Because they don't really want to
accuse outside lie, maybe.
anybody of lying, do they? Exactly. No. Or they don't. They were very reticent as well to say that anybody from RTE were telling these untruths on purpose.
Yeah.
They were just sort of, they didn't really know. I mean, for example, Noel Kelly's relationship with Dee Forbes, that we were told last week by the accountant that they had a really close relationship, and Noel Kelly insists they've never even had a cup of tea together, that he's only ever been at business meetings with her about 6 times a year, and
didn't have her number, didn't have her personal mobile.
Nothing. I have to say, I mean, I was looking at it and I was just thinking, this is the greatest case of the emperor's new clothes ever, though, that with Noel Kelly going in and being able to get that kind of money out of RTE. I'd say they were the easiest people in the world to get money out of, because it wasn't their money.
Exactly, and that's what Niall said the last time we were on. Like, they're competing against themselves. They just started writing blank checks left, right and centre. It is absurd.
How much do you want? 750,000?
That comes down to the culture, because they're all being paid that. So why wouldn't they pay Ryan Tubridy that? Or anybody else?
That maybe, for example, some of the higher executives, like the top 10 earners, to be non-executives, maybe to be sort of these...
But, that's the thing. Like, there was loads of money going around. There was presumably a lot more money going around RTE 20 years ago. And that's the culture that's set in, of course.
Somebody I met there just said to me that I was going, God, I really thought it was obscene when you think back that Ryan Tubridy earned 750,000.
Yeah.
One year, like 750,000. They said, but Pat Kenny earned 910.
Yeah.
For the Late Late Show.
Yeah, and his radio show, obviously.
But, I mean...
Yeah.
That is unreal.
Stunning. Like, it is stunning considering the size of the country.
And the fact that we've only got, Virgin Media wouldn't be paying anything like that.
No.
No. But Noel Kelly's future, I think, definitely is a little bit more unclear than Ryan Tubridy's. So you think Ryan Tubridy, you both think that he's going to be back on the airwaves?
Look at how complicated it's gotten for us here now, after sitting through it all and reading it all. Like, how much...
we've gone in and out a bit. I was very confident, and now I'm not so confident.
If you think about, how complex it is, and you think another couple of months, 3 months or something, like, what are people going to remember of what Ryan Tubridy has perceived to have done wrong? And I think people would think, there was a bit too much money floating around, and he did, you have to feel a bit sorry for him. Like, he some of it was a bit, you know, some of the stuff about the Post and all that, like, you know, whatever. I'm not a big fan of Ryan Tubridy, but, you know, will the public have enough to hold on to say that this guy has done something deeply wrong? I think
I think there's a little bit of a disconnect with the public
might
that
be.
he would stand up and say that he was burnt out after COVID, okay? I
missed a
think
trick there.
there was a little bit of everybody pretty much worked really hard to try and keep their jobs over that time. Loads of people didn't work at all and sat at home in what must have been very frightening and depressing, wondering would they ever work again. Mostly people within his industry, in actual fact.
Yeah.
People in the entertainment industry. I mean, they were worst hit of all. I mean, they're only getting back on their feet now, a lot of them. And saying that he was, I don't think that was a good idea.
That came out of the crisis comms, I'd say. I'd say they were like, just become more relatable, plead on the heartstrings,
Well, I think
talk up the COVID, talk up the
telling the truth, Ryan. I don't think he's making that up. But I don't think he probably should have really needed to say that to the rest of the country that, you know, I was earning this crazy amount of money, but I was also burnt out at the same time.
I'll tell you why I think, right, as long as he has the fight to survive, I think he'll survive. Now, the problem, I think, for being a public figure who's involved in you know, he would say he's not involved in the scandal, but he's been caught up in this scandal. I think he said the chaos and all that. And there's been other people, obviously, in the public eye who've endured these things. If you have the fight to go back out there, to endure people sniping at you, tweeting it every time you put something up on Twitter, to mention this again, if he has the fight to push on through that, I think people will generally.
I'm not sure he does, because he seems very, very sensitive.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying being cancelled is going to be easy. And he said there today, like, none of you have been cancelled, I hope, and it's awful. And no doubt it is. But he's known nothing but absolute love. He doesn't even have a little taste of what it's like. I mean, he did take himself off Twitter because he didn't like some of the comments being made. If any media tread even slightly into a little bit of his normal day-to-day life or his private life, he absolutely snapped back on that. And do you think he's able for a bit of criticism? I don't.
Well, I mean, I think that's the only question, because I think he could get enough public forgiveness. I think he has enough in the bank to be allowed to have another go at it. Does he have the stomach for the fight? I mean, we can think of other people, maybe even other broadcasters who've been involved in public scandals far, far worse.
Yeah.
And they've come back. And even 20 years on, you know, there'd be people who'd be mentioning that scandal again. Do they have the stomach to push on through it? So if he has it, I think
But he interestingly said there today, now he's feeling very vulnerable, I think. And, you know, it's almost like, to me, he looked like he was grieving the loss of something. And I'm sure that's probably the extent of how massive this feels to him. But he spoke about how much he wanted to get back on the radio, and he'd love to be back on the radio on Friday, basically. That he feels that he owes it. He has a special relationship with the children of Ireland, with the people of Ireland. You know, I think he sort of sees himself as a bit of a national treasure that has been knocked off his perch. But, like, I've slightly lost my train of thought there
he's
now.
Right to go back. Like, I mean, he should go back and personally, like, as I said, I'm not going to keep saying I'm not a fan of him, but he should go back and fight it out. Like, he's done what he's done. Like, is the, you know, the people
but
that
is he going to have that same sort of?
No, but I mean, he can have something else, you know, which is a slightly tainted version of that, and that's okay. Because it's been okay for many public figures who've endured that, and they've come back and reimagined themselves, reinvented themselves, taken a bit of a battering, and people ultimately will forgive him, because what did he do that's so wrong?
That's
you know?
before his. That's before he deals with the feelings of his work colleagues.
Well, I was just about to say that, because I spoke to someone last week for the paper, and they said his name was Mud, and they were really let down by him. That's going to be trickier for him.
I think that's even going to be
not the Irish public walking around the streets.
No.
It's actually walking into the canteen or walking into the studio for the first time if he does go back. But as Noel says, if he does stand up and fight and takes this on, it will be forgotten, I think. I genuinely do. And because there's so much change going on at the moment in RT as well.
So, or is he too much part of the old order that they need?
He's certainly the poster boy at the moment, but there is, like, as now that Kevin Backer's reign is starting and there's going to be massive changes, I can see this all just being part of the massive wave of change over there. And soon enough, his colleagues will forgive him. I think deep down people will want to forgive him. I mean, and be kind a little bit, because I think the pylons can be a bit much. And as Niall said, he hasn't done the worst. He hasn't committed actual crimes here. He's just made some morally bad decisions.
Yeah, and he earned too much money, and everybody's a bit jealous.
The problem for is he can't go back to where he was and just pick up where he left off. And I think he would probably have hoped to come out of these hearings as being the victim of this. He's got to come out, and he's going to have to be a bit different.
I know what I wanted to say when I lost slightly there when I was talking about him being in grief and all that, and that's how he does appear. He actually said in the middle of it all that he wants to go back to work, and he said, because it's all I have.
Yeah.
It's what I do and it's all I have.
I hear that.
And I can understand
and that's a very vulnerable thing to say in the middle of that. He's a little bit all over the place, Ryan Tubridy there, isn't he? He's completely and utterly like as if an incendiary device has gone off in his life. And
you could see both of them are angry. And even if, we look at them and say they've done this or that incorrectly, when these things happen to people, they feel angry, they feel victimized and mistreated. And, that's how they feel.
Traumatised.
Yeah.
And a little bit like some of the RTE executive board that were in, they did look traumatised in that. Now, they had to go in, Ryan Tubridy and Noel Kelly didn't. They went in willingly to answer these questions. And
I think it's, it's really tough for them. But, I mean, I think if you look at the whole overall picture of it, like really it's a cultural problem within RTE.
Most definitely.
And some of that has been driven by the fact that they're in an industry in the media where the money has disappeared out of it at unprecedented rates, and the culture has not changed sufficiently. And so there is a cultural problem in RTE, and that's really what the whole thing in the broader sense highlights. They're not living in the real world in part, and that's not Ryan Tubridy's fault or even Noel Kelly's, but that is something that has to be addressed.
Say they're raging they couldn't put ads in the TV today because it was some of the best content they've created.
How many people watch the Oireachtas TV?
I wonder even can they count the numbers, because no one watches that channel normally.
No.
But if they were able to place ads on that, Geraldine O'Leary would have made a fortune for
Absolutely.
RTE.
Geraldine O'Leary has gone into retirement though, isn't she?
She's gone into retirement. And I mean,
early.
look, it is.
Look, we started talking about this. We've done a previous podcast on it because we were, there's been rumblings from the beginning of this as regards whether it's going to go a step further and it'll be investigated. There's no Garda investigation as such at the moment. The finances and the untangling of that continue. There certainly is suggestions that this was wrong.
Yeah, there's suggestions within the Dáil committees which have been heard in public record that there was a suggestion that the public may have been defrauded. So that is there. And
we just see where it goes next. So what is the next? Are the RTE executive board are back?
They're back in on Thursday, aren't they?
Later this week. So.
And then the Dáil, of course, is breaking very soon. So I think that's it.
Will that kill it?
That will kill it.
Yeah.
I mean, that will kill it. And I think there's one more weekend of the story, and then the dominance of it as a news story will start to drop off.
And once people don't start talking the T word, the tribunal word, and we end up this costing the country tens of millions to get to the bottom of it.
The solicitors will win at the end of it all anyway, that's for sure.
And the auditors, Grant Thornton, are looking at it. What a job they did.
Yeah. So, interesting that I don't know. I'm not convinced he's back. I'm not convinced that he's back or how he could go back. And look, time heals things. And I suppose maybe at the other end of the summer, we might be in a completely different place. And there'll be...
The attention moves on.
Yeah.
It's not that he goes back undamaged. He will be, of course, affected in terms of his public reputation, but I don't think fatally so.
I always think of that Golfgate story that happened in COVID and the amount of heads that rolled and people that had to resign. And I mean, in particular, when Phil Hogan stepped down, a really significant MEP we had in Europe.
Commissioner,
and like a commissioner, and like so unnecessary, because actually in the end of the day it was all a little bit of a ball of smoke and nothing was found.
And who remembers the exact rights and wrongs of it? I mean, I know
all I remember was they were in separate rooms, the doors were open and they weren't sitting far enough away from each other. Now look, that was crazy when we think of
it was a 2-kilometre radius thing as well. He drove across the country stuff, but there were other details. But
and Sean O'Rourke, of course, Sean O'Rourke is was only just, how long is that ago? Because he's making his way back now. He has, of course, done his podcast series, which is something he wanted to do. But yeah, I mean, when you think of Sean O'Rourke being taken off the airwaves as a result of that, and you think Ryan Tubridy is going to be...
I think Ryan Tubridy will be forgiven. I think when all of the hype calms down, you'll think he could have been wiser. But I think it's absolutely forgivable.
And heads have rolled. They just haven't been in front of camera heads. But we do know that most of the board are gone, and DG is gone. Obviously, she was planning to go. But like, it's not like everything goes back to the way they were.
No, it's not.
There have been some sacrifices made by individuals. It's just not Ryan at the moment, and I don't think it will be.
Some of the politicians are gas as well, aren't they? It has to be said. I'm not going to get into particulars of them, but like, you know, there's some grandstanding going on there as well. Like, you know, and some of them are really good. So I'm not going to get into it because I might get the names up.
But the fawning at the start of each of them thanking him for his duty to TV and the charity work, like it was
and
it was like the first time they'd ever met a celebrity. They were starstruck.
It was a standout point for me as well when Noel Kelly very confidently said that Ryan Tubridy might have earned a lot of money, but he brought in 100+ million revenue for RTE. Like, I'm sorry, but RTE is the national broadcaster. Advertisers are going to go to it because it's the national broadcaster.
On Friday night,
it's primetime radio and television. And I don't honestly think that one man
is responsible for
for bringing in all that advertising. That if Ryan Tubridy wasn't there, we'd be 100 million down in advertising revenue in RTE.
You're telling the truth there,
Nicola. Silly. Right. Okay. Well, look, we'll get on to some proper real crime matters over the next few days, but we will stick with this a little bit as well, as long as there's still questions over.
And hopefully your mother won't give out to me this time. His mother wasn't happy because I kept interrupting Daragh
and arguing against everything I said.
Your mother had to look after you like that. Tell her, did she not want to ring me and talk about it? Because I could have absolutely silenced her. If I had a little button here, actually, that I could
one of
press,
those cattle prods,
or I could just say, "Niall, switch him off there for a while."
She tends to just disagree with you, Daragh, doesn't it? Yeah, he does.
Yeah. Was that what she? And was she? Yeah,
spot on, like as well.
Spot on.
Yeah.
And are you embarrassed by that?
No, I'm proud of that. Wasn't I? What did I say to her? Tell her I'm coming for her next. Is what I.
Your mother. Yeah. That's just the nature of him. Look, an elderly woman, I'm sure she doesn't like being called elderly, but he'd go for anyone, wouldn't he?
She's not that elderly.
No. A young woman, I should have said. Right, well, we'll see what she thinks of this.
I will, yeah.
I hope she doesn't think I talked over you. Right, thanks a lot.
Thanks, Nicola.